Dr. Sofragzania from Hong Kong, who will give 2 lectures. She's a neurophysiologist from London University and has a great experience in dealing with hormonal decline and compromised metabolism. Please, Dr. Sofra.
Thank you very much for inviting me. And we will start with the unsolved problem of aging, because it's still unsolved or semi-solved. And it has several problems. A lot of things obviously lead to that aging, decline in hormones or increase in certain hormones. Another problem is that when you are young and you're sitting down or you're sleeping, you burn more calories. And when you age, you burn much less calories. So basically, that's how you can increase your weight. Increased toxicity is a major thing. Every time you increase toxicity, you increase hunger, increased inflammation, and of course, the immune system is not functioning as well as in youth. Now, the benefits of high testosterone are very, very well known, and everybody has spoken about them in previous lectures. Of course, low testosterone causes low energy, joint pain, no sexual desire, erectile dysfunction, heart disease, so on and so forth. But there's other hormones that cause very similar symptoms. So the smoking gun is not just the low estradiol, because is it the low estradiol or is it the high cholesterol? So what we have to say is that the problem is imbalance. And let's start from the beginning. What are hormones? Hormones are communication agents. They are proteins that communicate in the body. And hormonal function is not a specific action of some cells. It's a hormonal function is a general biological function of many, many different cells. And not only endocrine cells produce hormones, there's a lot of other non-endocrine cells that produce hormones, like neurons, like mast cells, endothelial cells, and so on and so forth. I made a long list there. Now, the spectrum of hormonal substances produced by these cells is extremely wide. They include many different agents that you would not even think of. Again, it's a very, very long list, like insulin, ACTH, leptin, and so on and so forth. Now, a systemic problem cannot be solved by changes in only one aspect of the system. It has to be many different aspects of the system that have to be targeted simultaneously. So hormonal decline means decline in cellular communications, and hormonal overproduction means problems again with cellular communications. So it's the imbalance that is the problem. For example, with the immune system, the TRC receptor signaling decreases with age. You can see a study that has manifested the results and the decrease of the TRC signaling with age from the immune system. So immune system is not functioning, is not communicating properly. And there is a lot of different, for example, you see here, over here, this is younger communications, and this is communications of cells in the old. You can see there's a significant difference there. There's a reduction in communications. And Zia et al. In 2006 found that aging is the result of reduced protein-to-protein communications. Now, do cells really communicate? Yes, they do. There has been several Nobel Prizes since 1998 and 1999 to show that cells do communicate. Not only they communicate, but they change the functions of another cell through this communication. And also, billions of cells are controlled by proteins that are carrying messages like emails that go to specific addresses. Now, a more recent Nobel Prize showed that if we take the brakes of the immune system away, actually you can control, you can heal cancer. Basically, what you can do is you can have cancer therapy by eliminating immune system signaling responses. So here you have the CTLA-4 and the PD-1, which is the brakes of the immune system. When you take those off, when you inhibit it, then you can have a chance of healing cancer. It's a new Nobel Prize 2018. In other words, if you see here, all the red are agents that have to be reduced. So you need to have decreased mitochondrial respiration, you have to have decreased insulin IGF-1 signaling, decreased GAF dependent hormone signaling, you have to have increased the JKM pathway, but there is a balance between decreasing certain functions that are aimlessly going on and they don't stop, and which basically compromise longevity, and you can increase other aspects of signaling to increase longevity. So it's not an easy solution. It's a very complex solution that has many components, a lot of moving parts, let me say. So let's recap the aspects of the aging problem. You have hormonal imbalance, you have reduced resting metabolic rate. So that means when you're sitting, you burn less calories. With aging, you have weight gain, of course. And with weight gain comes toxicity. And with weight gain also comes inflammation. And there comes disease. And then, of course, you have the immune system decline. And William Meggs said that exercise can fool the body to think that it's younger than it really is. So the brain, after sitting quietly, and the brain after 20 minutes of walk, had a very different outlook. Inflammation is great for the young, but it's extremely deleterious for the old and leads to diabetes, heart disease, etc. There is a study that was done from the American Heart Association with 722 men, and they looked at the CRP, the C-reactive protein levels before and after exercise. And what they found is that people that were very fit only had 16% of the CRP levels, whereas over 49% of those who were not as fit had very high CRP levels. That means higher inflammation. So exercise is, when you're fit, your inflammation is reduced. However, here comes the problem. With very strenuous exercise, there is a balance between cortisol and testosterone. And cortisol increases with very strenuous exercise, and testosterone decreases. And you also have another problem, that the pH balance, the body's pH balance, is also affected with very extreme exercise, with very strenuous exercise. And now we have different problems with the cortisol levels, which again appear like low testosterone. You have very similar things like weight gain, you have toxicity increase, and so on and so forth. And so you have the toxicity that increases cortisol, trauma, stress, infections, and no exercise. And on the other hand, you have very strenuous exercise that also increases testosterone, that increases cortisol, and it increases toxicity. And it's like a vicious circle that goes round and round. And it's like, how are we going to solve this? Now, toxic stress changes the brain architecture. There has been a lot of studies on this, but this is just something that you can sort of look at. That is normal and abnormal neurons as a result of stress. And here comes a very interesting part. Toxicity imbalances all fat-burning hormones. So the more toxic you are, the more hormonally imbalanced you are. And there is certain, these hormones like ghrelin and leptin that trigger the appetite with the hypothalamus. So basically, the more toxic you are, the more hungry you are. So detoxification is extremely important under these circumstances. So here we go again with a vicious circle. You have hormonal imbalance, then you get hungry, then of course you eat more, then the fat increases, toxicity increases, hormonal imbalance increases, and it goes round and round, another vicious circle. And the visceral fat problem is major, and people they underestimate it. But this visceral fat not only wraps itself around our organs, but it invades our organs. And obviously, by invading them, it compromises their functioning. Now, this is a healthy liver, and this is a fatty liver. You see the fatty liver, the fat is inside the liver. So it's not that easy to take that fat out of the liver. And unfortunately, visceral fat cannot be removed by lasers or radio frequency. And with exercise, yes, you can. It's great to be fit, but the problem is that strenuous exercise can increase the cortisol, that it can increase the weight gain. So you get into this vicious circle thing with exercise. Plus, when you are exercising and you are over 20, you don't get this guy's physique. You get this guy's physique. So the visceral fat is still there. So he's got the muscle, but the visceral fat has not been removed. And of course, some people cannot exercise because of body aches, and if you exercise very strenuously and you're 50 years old, you're probably going to injure yourself. And there is other conditions that you cannot exercise at all. So this is a technology that the co-inventor of the pacemaker developed. He built it in London University, and since then there has been a lot of doctors around the world that have basically utilized it with their patients. It burns visceral fat, it detoxes and balances the hormones. And we primarily developed it for athletes, for sports injury. But then Roman Ove has been successfully treated with this. That's the only athlete that we can mention his name. A lot of athletes have used it. What it does, it transmits an unlimited resolution complex signal composed out of 4,000 waveforms that induces a constant 8-second contraction of large group of muscles without you moving, basically. It's very different than a muscle stimulator that sends electrical pulses without any signals to depolarize muscles. And repeated use of muscle stimulators has caused cells apoptosis, so it's not such a good thing. So here you have sort of a solution that you can use with exercise, without exercise, because it decreases inflammation, it decreases visceral fat, and also it decreases toxicity, which means that you're not as hungry. Additionally, when you exercise, there is a combination of oxygen and lactic acid, but with the oxygen can produce 38 molecules of energy, ATP, but lactic acid only produces 2. So you work out in the gym, you run out of oxygen, lactic acid kicks in. So in the end, the energy that you can get with effortless exercise that does not involve lactic acid is obviously greater, just do the math. So that's another advantage. And basically how it works, it sends a signal to the motor nerve, and the motor nerve spreads that signal to motor nerves all around to simulate strenuous exercise. In response to the motor nerves firing, all these waves of motor nerves end up getting to the brain because they're part of the central nervous system. The brain, when it reaches the brain will respond the way it responds during exercise, and it will release hormones. The hormones, thyroid and growth hormone and other hormones will basically enter the fat cells, which are going to release their contents into the bloodstream. They're going to shrink as a result of that. The energy that is developed out of this process creates the other proteins acting and myosin to build the muscle. So there has been a lot of studies that have been done, a lot of experimental studies where we found a significant increase of T3, a significant increase of DHEA, a significant increase of a decrease of triglycerides. Studies in lymphatic drainage with 5 patients showed quite significant results. Other studies showed that their cortisol does not increase with this technology. And visceral fat, significant reduction with MRIs, experimental studies, increased muscle mass, significant increased muscle mass. And in 1991, again in London University, Goldpick looked at RNAs, and he found that it sort of involved the expression of skeletal genes that are associated with total load stretch and physical exercise, therefore implying a kinship between this and actual exercise. And some data collection, very successful fat burning, and not water content was not changed. We don't basically, it's not based on water, the weight loss. Studies, clinical studies on diabetic patients, you can see the no fatty liver is sort of a significant, this is a study from Dr. Badami in India, actually. Another study from Dr. Badami, again, with diabetic patients. Some other results from before and afters, their certificates, obviously, like FDA and CE mark and things. And thank you for the first lecture.
Very interesting. Are there questions from the floor? I can't believe it. This was so impressive. May I summarize? Did you really say that I can mimic muscle activity, stimulating the brain, that is then eliciting, signaling to lose fat?
Yes, that's exactly what I said. Yes.
It's fantastic, don't you think? So please, if there are no questions.
This is Jerry Pollock is a pioneer in many things, and he started with the pacemaker, and then he started with this technology. He just built it in London University. And if you met him, he couldn't care less about anything else other than his science, really. So let's go into sexual anti-aging now. Now, sexual dysfunction, again, is a complex thing. It's not just hormones, it's how our body looks, it's our hair, it's our look, it's our self-confidence, and it's psychological factors. So it's a number of many, many different things. And aging is associated, of course, with the decline in sexual activity, both for men and for women. Women find excuses to avoid sexual contact, and so do men, and organs, of course, are less active. Now, the effects of hormonal imbalance on the skin and the increase of cortisol and the decrease of other hormones like testosterone, growth hormone, and TSH create problems that makes women insecure, like wrinkles, pigmentations, and many different, it makes them not feel safe and not confident. And of course, the hormones, several hormones, 6 very famous ones, like low testosterone, insulin decrease, like hypothyroidism, and certain hormones are more kind of involved in this lower sexual desire. Excess cortisol is one of them, we mentioned it before. And there is a very, sexual dysfunction among diabetics is quite pronounced. And have been a lot of studies. I'm citing the Oridecu study in 2017 with 130 males and 116 females, and avoidance and inadequacy as a result of the diabetic. Sexual drive and aging is really worse with women. So I think that as doctors, we should start paying more attention to women and how women, how we can enhance sexuality in women. And as you can see, the frequency of sexual desire in men is far more than the frequency of sexual desire in women. And let's talk about physiological changes in women's sexuality: childbirth, weight fluctuations, hormonal changes, laxity of the vaginal canal, damage of the pelvic floor, stress, urinary incontinence, vaginal atrophy, dryness, and also sexual drive, quality of life, self-confidence. And bacterial vaginosis creates bacterial infections in women, so that's another problem that comes with aging. Of course, the estrogen decline leads to loss of subcutaneous tissue, the vaginal laxity that we're talking about, atrophy of the labia majora, shortening and loss of elasticity, so on and so forth. And that results in bleeding and discomfort during intercourse. And there is a lot of different techniques, like, of course, lubricants and hormonal replacement, lasers, radiofrequency, and laboratory, basically surgery. And all of them are successful, but we have found that with the signaling, you also can get a basically stronger vaginal muscles, and you get reduction in vaginal infections that you cannot get with lasers or radiofrequency, and you can also get an enhanced sexual sensation. Now, when you ask your patients about their satisfaction level, you need to ask them if the satisfaction is due to just not feeling the pain, or whether the satisfaction is the result of enhanced organs and enhanced sexual sensation. That is very important because most women just want to satisfy their man, and they don't really care. They fake their orgasms sometimes, or a lot of times. Now, hormonal replacement has some dangers, and they have been associated with hormone replacement. And there is a lot of research, especially after 2002. Of course, there was research that came after that said, no, it's completely safe. But there has been some incidents of dangers with hormone replacement. And fitness enhances sexual activity, but it also reduces. Again, we're going according to what we were talking about previously, that too much exercise starts reducing sexual activity. So Dr. Lawrence, he started with, back in Cindy Maston in 1996, she found that after 20 minutes of bicycling, the vaginal pulse amplitude would change for women, and the sexual arousal would be more intense. Dr. Lawrence replicated that, but then Dr. Hackney showed that more exercise leads to less sexuality. So again, we have the same problem of that we have to exercise a certain amount, but not more of it creates a problem. And again, it's the same board that looked at vaginal, they did different studies on vaginal rejuvenation, and again on weight loss. And now toxicity also increases, interferes with hormones. And there is toxicity interferes with sex hormone synthesis. And this is a study that was done in 2006, that were told 2016. and also Hodgson in 2004. And again, the same clinical study that I cited before on lymphatic drainage, this is, it's necessary for the toxicity not to be in our bodies, for our sexuality to be higher. And why does it work on toxicity? For some reason, we have seen from microscopic blood studies that 360 subjects we did for one treatment, and we found an 80% RBC separation. And then with 19 subjects, we find a 97% RBC separation after 6 treatments. And it was sustained. So that is an important thing. Now, Bernard in 2013, that's an unpublished study, did a clinical study of, he found increased sexual desire, increased sexual activity, and ability to sustain sexual intercourse longer. And the reason for the RBC separation is that it really acts as a natural Viagra, so it enhances sexuality in men and, of course, women. A recent study was done in China with 25 females and vaginal rejuvenation, and they found 90% of women in the study reported no bleeding and burning sensations during intercourse, and reduction in bacterial sensations, and also they reported an enhanced sexual desire, well, sexual satisfaction for them, not for the men. Now, when Jerry Pollock developed this technology, he actually cleared it in the UK as a Class 2 device for incontinence in 2006. And he did several studies, studied from a pilot study and then follow-up studies on this. So we have several methods to treat sexual dysfunction. Hormonal imbalance, we have hormonal replacement, we have exercise, we have the signaling alternative. White loss, we have the laser, RF, of course, signaling. Visceral fat is exercise and the signaling. Lasers cannot do very well with that. Detox, again, we have various drinks, sports, again, the signaling, you can do detox, combining sports and drinks and signaling is the best. Now for hair growth, of course, you can have hair transplants. For rejuvenation, you have lasers and other methods. Decreasing vaginal laxity, you have, again, RF and signaling. The only thing that the signaling seems to be, has an advantage is the bacterial infections and the enhanced sexual sensation, and also in increasing the strengthening the floral muscles of the vagina. Now, signaling technology has 2 different aspects. One is for the motor nerve and one is just for the cell. And I want to just introduce you how the one for the cell works. So you have cellular apoptosis and disrupted cellular communications, and with aging or disease, of course. And what signaling tech does, it transmits signals at very low energies, below thermal noise. And for some reason, we don't know why, but the channels of the cells open up at those energies. And the signals enter the cells, and what they do, they basically amplify the signals of the cells that have deteriorated, or they kind of join other cells and they fill in broken biological signals to kind of increase repair and regeneration. And by increasing repair and regeneration, you basically restoring signaling pathways. And by restoring the signaling pathways, you have changes in the facial problems, like, for example, melasma, wrinkles, scars. And you have sort of a younger, naturally younger look, and that's based on increased cellular communications. And this is a very aged subject. She's 86, and she was treated for herpes zoster with very good results. Again, herpes zoster. Again, all of those aspects of that, the aged get like herpes zoster and all of these skin disorders, of course they were going to reduce their sexuality and they're wanting to have sexual intercourse. Hair becomes a problem. Of course, hair transplant is the best alternative for that, but you can help it with some signaling, with some. Unfortunately, this doctor put this is the before, this is the after, before and after, and that's another one, before and after, before and after. And Dr. Lampe recently did a study on pain and mobility with diabetic patients, and about 100% of the patients reported increased mobility and healing of their wounds. So mobility, again, is very important because if you cannot move, you cannot have sexual intercourse. But the importance of psychotherapy people have not paid too much attention on the psychotherapy part. And it's extremely important because, like I said, women want to please their men and they don't look after themselves. But when they are not fully involved in the sexual intercourse, the man also loses interest. You know, they sense it that they're not fully involved in it. Demoshok did the research for the type C personality disorder, which is basically the women that are always want to be pleasant. They are always, they never complain. Everything is for somebody else. They are the eternal mother kind of thing. But this is the type of person called the type C personality that they tend to develop melanoma and cancers. And of course, all the psychotherapy started with Freud and with Reich, that they spoke about how all psychopathology and all actually physical illness is the result of blocked energy. And in China, you have actually blocked energy. You have Chai, I think, or I probably mispronounce it, that unblocks the energy. This is both West and East have come to the same conclusion. Blocked energy creates psychopathology, creates disease, creates psychological problems. And I did a study for my master's thesis in New York, and what I found is that shame is the emotion that has the highest correlation with physical illness and psychological illness. So psychotherapy focus, we have to increase on degrees of freedom, basically increase the woman's degrees of freedom. That's the last slide. And basically self-approval, learn how to please herself, being introduced to herself or to himself, if that's a man, to free themselves from the past and basically increase social activity and learn how to have confidence at any age. And thank you very much.